Welcome to the What's Your Weird Story podcast.
Everyone has at least one good story.
And some of us have stories that are just to the left of normal.
We're interested in the ones that push the boundaries of what we can perceive.
Stories that defy explanations.
Stories with an air of mystery.
Stories we might not share
for fear of being thought of differently.
But don't worry, we're all friends here. So, what's your weird story?
Hello, Weirdsville. Welcome to the What's Your Weird Story podcast, your weekly installment of The Weird. With me, as always, my co-host, my partner, kind of my partner in life when I think about it, Mr. Adam Beebe. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing all right, man. A little tired today. Stayed up a little too late watching TV, but I'm doing all right. I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. I'm doing good, man. What have you been watching?
I like different things. So I've been watching a lot of British panel comedy shows, which are kind of like game shows, except they have actors and comedians on, and they ad-lib and do stuff.
Nice.
While they're pretending to be playing a game or something like that. And a couple of my favorites of those are 8 out of 10 Cats, which is hosted by Jimmy Carr, who's one of my favorite comedians.
Yeah.
And I also really enjoy Celebrity Juice, which is just this really absurd, over-the-top game show that would never fly in America. Honestly, none of these kind of shows would fly in America because our celebrities, I don't think, would do it. But
right.
But in the UK, man, it's like they love doing these things, and it's kind of like, hey, this is a kind of cool thing for one of their, a lot of like comedians and TV type celebs.
Yep.
So yeah, I've been enjoying those, and also catching up on my favorite sci-fi comedy series, Red Dwarf. Which is it's another British show, and it's set in the far future, and it's about the last human being alive.
Nice.
And he's just the complete biggest kind of slacker bum schlub in the universe. Just dude, but he's really it's endearing, and he was kept in a suspended animation as a punishment for sneaking a cat on his spaceship that he was working on, this giant mining craft that's out in space. That's what we call the Red Dwarf. That's where they get the name of it. And while he's in stasis leak, there's a radiation leak that kills everybody on the ship, and the computer, which is like an AI, and it keeps him in suspended animation while all the radiation depletes it goes out. And so it's like 3 million years or something like that. So in that time, of course, everybody's dead, but a race of intelligent cat people evolved from the cat that he snuck on board, and its kittens, and then they end up leaving, and so there's one of them left, and he's kind of like the dumbest one of them all. And the computer also reanimates in a holographic form his old roommate, who he just that Lister couldn't stand. They fought all the time, so it's this odd couple thing. And this guy Remmer, it was just the complete pain in the ass prick, and he's great. They're great characters, and they find a robot who's a service robot who cleans up after them, but also handles all the smart things because they're not that smart. But it's a weird combination because science fiction and comedy usually don't mix real well.
Yeah, that's an interesting genre, man.
Yeah, well, this thing, it's a cult. It's become a cult phenomenon. It started in like the late 80s, right? And it went and they have short seasons, so it's only like 8 episodes or something like that. Sometimes even short. But like they keep coming back because people keep wanting to come back and do stuff. So like there'll be like years and years and years between seasons, and so they keep coming back and doing that. And then I discovered another sci-fi comedy last night. This is what I was up watching late, and this one is more related to our show, really, when you think about it, or when I think about it, because I don't know if you've seen it, but it's called People of Earth.
Okay.
And it was on, I think it was on TBS a couple of years ago, and it has a few familiar faces. Has Anna Gasteyer, she was on SNL.
Yeah.
And then it's got Oscar Nunez, who was Oscar on The Office.
Okay. Yep.
And it has Alice Wetterland, who is she's a comedian, and she also one of the hosts of one of my favorite comedy podcasts about Star Trek: The Next Generation, Treks in the City.
Okay.
These two women who talk about Star Trek, and not from like a nerdy angle, but from somebody who just watches the show and really loves it and talks about the characters.
Right.
But half of the show is just them talking with whoever their guest on.
That's cool.
And it's great. I love it. I love it. I stumbled on it and I love it. But so it's the premise of this show is there's a reporter who goes to this small town in I think it's upstate New York called Beacon, and he thinks he's going to write a story about this small group of people who are self-proclaimed abductees, and he gets there and he meets them, and they're all characters, they're all quirky and whatever to different degrees. And while he's there, he ends up kind of realizing that he may have actually been an abductee, and he kind of reluctantly is, embracing this, and he joins the group. And then you have the flip side where you see the actual aliens are who are up, on their spaceship, and they're collecting the information, and some of them are interacting with the people. Like one of the main people is the main character's boss, his former boss, and he's a reptilian. And there's a reptilian aliens, and then there's the Nordic type, which are the tall, pale, long-haired, like Nordic gods, like Thor or whatever. Yeah. And then there's the Greys. And it has all three of them on those type on there, and it's really funny. It's not like slapstick or like sitcom funny, but it's kind of more not quite The Office, but more kind of in that vein where it's like it's but it's I don't know, man. It's short lived. It's 2 seasons.
Okay.
I'm almost through the first season, and I'm really enjoying it, and I think it's worth it's worth checking out.
That's cool. Yeah.
So,
that's
People
great.
of Earth, Red Dwarf, Celebrity Juice, and 8 out of 10 Cats.
Nice.
That's what I've been doing.
Nice, man. Well, this is the time to do it, man. When we got time to do it. A comedy, too, is like, that's really like the last, like, I'd say 5 years of my life, maybe 10 years of my life. When I have free time, it's comedy. I listen to comedy podcasts, because it's just uplifting, and it's gets you out of your head. It puts things into perspective, and it's just great stuff to, especially when we're having such hard times right now, to get into, something that is just a little absurd and fun, Yeah.
And it's a great stress reliever to laugh.
Yes.
It releases chemicals in your brain, and you laugh and you have a good time. You enjoy it, even if it's absurd. I think the more absurd, honestly, the better it is, because you really laugh at stuff. Because I watch some other shows that are comedies that I'm like, man, I don't know, not so much for me. But that's all personal taste.
Sure.
But yeah, I agree with you that now is a really good time for finding good comedy, and also like I'm on the same boat where I would rather watch an 80s sitcom that I've seen 1,000 times before than a drama. It's hard for me to find the interest to get into that. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's great, man. Well, speaking of getting into cool stuff, we've got a cool guest, and we were lucky to get her on. We've tried to get her on. We've talked about getting her on for quite some time, and you guys will remember our guest, Anthony. He was on a few episodes back. He's been on a couple of times, and he was talking about going on these ghost hunts, and he was talking about Tammy, and she is someone local to me here in my area. I wanted to reach out to her for some time, and I felt like having Anthony on the show would be a nice way to kind of make that connection, and so we were able to get her on, and she shared some really great stuff with us, man. I'm really I'm floored that what she was talking about was here in where I live in my hometown here. So it's good and exciting.
Yeah. Her stories are really, really incredible and really cool, and really, I'm not one to want to go into looking for ghosts and ghost hunting and exploring or taking ghost walks, anything like that. Really, so much, but her stories really make me maybe I will. Maybe I would someday. Right. I don't know.
We can make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's get into this. Tammy, what's your weird story?
Well, I have lots of weird stories.
Cool.
Do you want the weirdest story?
Yeah. Give us the weirdest.
Okay. So I've done lots of paranormal investigation stuff and research, and co-authored a book about Oklahoma ghost stories. So I have lots of stories, but the one that I always tell as the weirdest or the scariest thing happened at a place called the Baker Hotel in Texas. And so there's a town called Mineral Wells, Texas. It's not very big. It's about 15,000 people. And it has, in the middle of their town, this gigantic old Art Deco hotel. It was built in the 20s and was like just a big, huge showpiece spa type place back in the day. And so it's been abandoned since the 70s. And for a while, they had like a caretaker, and you could kind of still get in and go around the hotel and stuff. And then after a while, she passed away, and then the city like stopped letting anybody go in at all, kind of like condemned it. So you couldn't go in at all. And then it sat that way for a really long time. And now somebody finally purchased it and is remodeling it. So that's exciting. But the Baker is 14 stories tall and about as big like as a city block. It's a big building.
That is massive.
Yeah.
It is very big.
And that's in a small, because I've never heard of Mineral Wells, Texas. It seems like it's probably a small town.
It is a small town. Yeah.
And it's got a 14-story tall building.
Yeah. And it's
insane.
And the really cool thing about the Baker is that it was self-sufficient. So it had this whole like water generator system underneath it that ran the whole thing, and it went out kind of far under the city because the whole hotel could be self-sufficient. And it was a spa. Like, did you guys ever see that movie, The Road to Wellville? Or know the story about like...
I know the story, yeah, but I have not seen it.
Okay, so it was very similar to that. So they would have like, so they had a spa there, and people would come there for the healing waters because the Mineral Wells water is said to be helpful to heal people. And so people would come from all over the place to come to these healing spas in their waters. And like on one floor, they had this whole it was so weird because, like I said, it was built in the 20s, and they had this whole room of like these. You guys remember Tan and Tone America type stuff where they'd have those toning tables?
Yeah, oh yeah.
They were like that, but they were old timey looking. So it was kind of crazy. But that's what they were. And they had all these like exercise tables and equipment. And then they had like these colonics booths.
Oh,
that you
boy.
Colonics.
I had a fascination with colonics for a little while. I never got one, but I always wanted to try it.
Well, I can find some pictures because I have pictures of it somewhere, but it was pretty weird. And like, this is all Art Deco-y type stuff. So
I just pulled up a picture of it, and I'll have to put one up on our social media, but man, it is massive. It's really cool looking, and it is just it sticks out like a 15th thumb. I mean, and it's just so bizarre for everything else.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it was like no expense was spared when this thing was built in the 20s. And so I want to say in like 1929, the cost, it was like $2 million some dollars back then.
Wow.
Which was a huge amount of money on anything. And so, I mean, today's dollars, I don't even know what it would be. And the workmanship in the place is, I mean, it's just amazing. Like, there's all this like just hand carved things and like beautiful woodwork, and just on these the elevator doors on the first floor are copper with like enamel inlays of the lettering and stuff. It's just a really cool, like all the little tiny Art Deco details in the place are amazing. So anyway, it's a really cool building. It's beautiful, and it's very big. And of course, whenever we were in there, it was dark because there's not really any electricity. There was some electricity to like the mezzanine. It was like the only spot in the whole place that had electricity. So you had to basically do everything with flashlights or in the dark.
Right.
Essentially. So we were, and I have been there probably maybe 4 or 5 times. Got to spend a whole night in there once. It was really cool. So on one of our subsequent visits, I'd been there a few times. And everybody that's ever been there will tell you that you don't ever forget it. And you like have dreams about it. Like it's super weird. Wow. Like everybody I know that's been there has similar stories about how they've like had dreams about it and stuff.
Wow.
It's like, it's one of those stick with you kind of places.
That's wild.
You have feelings about it. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just one of those places you just get attached to. It's a really cool place. And the history of it is interesting anyway. But so we were there one night, and my friend Tanya and I were walking along this dark hallway. And there had been, like I said, we'd been there before, and I was always there with her. We were always together when we went. And there were times in this building where you would be walking around, and there's, hallways, 'cause it's a hotel, and you would kind of be like, I'm not going that way. Like, you just get a feeling about, I don't think I need to go down that hallway.
Yeah.
So we would kind of be like, let's not go that way. And so, we'd wandered all over the place. Well, this particular night, we found ourselves, she and I were just wandering by ourselves, and we found ourselves walking down this hallway that we hadn't really gone down before. And it just looked like a hotel hallway would, doors on each side and whatever. But at the end of the hallway was a big window, and the moon was really bright. So the moon was shining inside. So we didn't need our flashlights because we could see. And so we're walking along, and Tanya is famous for when we're on investigations or somewhere scary, she tries to kind of say things to spook you or get you to react just because she thinks it's funny to see how you respond.
Yeah.
And so after years of like doing things with her, I kind of blow it off most of the time, go whatever. So we're walking along the hallway, and I think we were arm in arm when it happened. We were just walking down the hall, and she goes, "Oh my God, I think I'm going to be sick." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "I just feel like I'm going to throw up." She's like, "I don't feel good." And I was like, "Whatever." And because I thought she's just trying to see if I would say, "Oh, me too," or something like that.
Right.
So I just said, "Whatever." And so we kept walking, and she said, "Man, I don't know." She's like, "I just felt really weird." So we kept walking. We get to the end of the hallway, and we turn around and we start walking back. So now I'm on the side that she had originally been on. And so we're walking back, and and ahead of me, I see like kind of a shimmer in the air, like when you see a heat wave.
Yeah.
It's really, really hot out, and you see that on the highway, kind of see that shimmer. It looked like that, but it was in the moonlight in the dark hallway. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. So anyway, we were walking along, and I get to that point and walk through it, and immediately from my toes to my head, I had this wave of intense sadness.
Whoa.
And my eyes filled up with tears, like I was going to cry. Like it was a physical reaction. But my brain was thinking, this is really weird because you're not sad. Like what is happening right now? And I mean, it was just a split second thing. And I stopped, and I was like, oh my God, that was weird. And she goes, I told you. She's like, I told you there was something. I told you, because it was about the same spot. She goes, I told you something was jacked up right there. And I was like, and I kind of stopped for a minute, and I had to kind of catch my breath. And I was like, wow, this is super weird, because I just felt really, really sad, but it wasn't me that was sad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was like a physical reaction. It was so weird. So I kind of stopped for a second, and we went on down the way, and we met up with some of our other friends, and everybody was kind of trading stories about stuff that had happened in the building. And I wasn't really saying very much, and they were like, what is going on with you? And I kind of told them what happened, and they were all looking at me, because they know that I never BS about stuff like that. Like, I just don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty skeptical, really. I mean, I think that things exist, and I totally believe in paranormal activity, ghosts and stuff like that, but I don't ever make it up, and I never elaborate or embellish things. And a lot of times everybody even told me, they were like, if I said that, you would have called BS on it. And I'm like, yeah, I probably would. Because whatever, or I mean, it would be hard for me to imagine how that would happen if I hadn't experienced it. So everybody thought there was like, well, that something really must have happened because she never says stuff like that, like she never claims it happened that don't happen. So it was weird. It was super weird. And so of all the things that have ever happened in any of the places, that one was the weirdest because it was physical and it was really strange.
Wow. So are you taking, like, when you would do these things, are you taking instruments too to measure things, or is it just a lot of it just sort of experiencing it, walking through the place?
Kind of when we were really investigating places was kind of right before it all blew up, like on TV and stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it was like before all that, and so it was when we were still our own little nerddom of
right.
Kind of stuff. And so we all had different things, but primarily I would just mostly use like a tape recorder or video camera. I mean, I didn't get real technical or fancy about things because my main interest was really about the history and trying to corroborate stories. Right. Mm-hmm. So like my favorite kind of ghost story is one that's happened at the same place to different people that don't know each other.
Gotcha.
So that everybody can be like, well, that they've all had similar experiences.
Right.
And then when you find out the history of something and find out there might be a reason for that to be happening, like that's my favorite part of all this is kind of putting the stories together.
Sure.
And that's cool. And Tanya, she was really good at EVP stuff, the voices on tape.
Right.
And so she has lots of really good ones that she's captured over the years. And so, I mean, sometimes, we would take stuff, but a lot of times for me personally, I would rather just walk around myself and watch, see what happens. Right. Because you kind of get, you get distracted by the other stuff.
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that. A tape
recorder you can carry around or whatever, and then just listen back to it, And then that was kind of before we just used analog tape recorders more than and then we started using digital ones, later on. But so everybody had their different preferences for stuff. We had a parabolic microphones that were kind of cool, so you could hear every little thing, and it's all just normal stuff.
A quick question, and because I've wondered about this. When you go, what do you feel like? Is there one that's better than another? Is digital better than analog, or vice versa? Are they comparable, or does it maybe one work differently than the other? Because I know, because with analog, there's a physical medium that's being transformed. In digital, it's just ones and O's, but analog and as far as being an audiophile, analog is a more truer sound because you're capturing the sound waves as waves and not as digital information and bits. Sorry, I'm nerding out a little bit on my own right there, but I've always wondered if that was a better way to capture, or if it's does it or even make a difference?
Well, I don't really know that much about the technical stuff. And Tanya would really be more of one to tell you her preference and her thoughts, because that was really her area more than mine. I think it's interesting, and I had both. And I don't think that I don't know that one captures things better than the other. I just think analog seems to be a more raw type thing, and so it is a little more pure, I guess. Yeah. And it's not as touchy. So I feel like if it picks it up, then it's probably really more accurate than, because digital is cool and it has a different kind of clarity. But for example, if you have a 35 millimeter camera and you have digital cameras, I'll tell you things really changed in that whole world of stuff with cameras, because if you think about all the 35 millimeter films you've seen in your life, all the pictures you've seen, photos, there aren't all these orbs and things and then that people claim to have.
Right.
So then when people got digital cameras, everybody in the dang world was taking pictures of spirits because they had orbs in them, not understanding that dust and bugs and light and reflection off of a slick surface can cause orbs in your pictures.
Right.
And so everybody would be oh, look at all these orbs. And I'm you're in the middle of a dirt field. Of course you're going to have them because it's dirty or mist or anything. Mist causes them. Cigarette smoke does weird things to digital photos. You can recreate so many weird things with digital because what it does to the light.
Right.
and 35 millimeter cameras didn't do that. So you had to be really picky when you started using digital film, digital cameras. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if I don't know much about the sound stuff, if that's kind of the same thing, but I know camera wise that there was a big difference to me between 35 millimeter and video cameras and then digital.
Right.
Because digital, I mean, you pick up so much junk on a digital camera.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of these people, when it comes to the stuff that's on TV, have kind of made their living.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, and I love those shows. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah,
I love a good Zach Baggins. You know what I mean? But like,
man?
How do you make your living off of this stuff that I doubt happens as often that they claim it does? You know what I mean? So that's all I'm going to say about that. But
yes. That's true. And I don't think that it's like malicious. I think people just want it to happen so badly that they, they get sucked into it or whatever. Right. Because people that look for that kind of stuff, I mean, they really want to find it, and right. we approached it a little more skeptically most of the time. We would always kind of go in thinking, is this person on a lot of medication? Do they have a lot of cats? Like, are they stable? Because sometimes it was that they weren't stable, or that they did have a toddler that was tearing things up that they didn't know about, or I mean, that kind of stuff happened more than people would like to admit. And so we would always try to go in and find the rational explanation, whereas there's other groups that would go in and just be for sure that it's haunted, it's 1,000,000% haunted,
right,
and then and then you're just kind of like, well, is it? Yeah.
So what got you into the paranormal investigating? What was it that drove you into getting into that kind of stuff?
Ever since I was a little kid, I have had this fascination with ghost stories and scary stories. Like my aunt and my grandma would always let me watch horror movies way before I should have.
Right.
Was way too
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But my aunt didn't have kids, so she was like, "Okay, here, let's read this scary vampire comic book or whatever." But I don't know. Ever since I was little, I was just fascinated with scary stories, and I think part of it is an adrenaline thing. Just like anybody that likes roller coasters or something like that, which I hate, but I love to be spooked. Like I just it's fun.
Right.
And so I love that, watch that moment you get when you're watching a scary movie and something's going to happen and you don't really want to see it, but you want to see it.
Yep.
And so I don't know. I think part of it is an adrenaline thing. And I just kind of like the mystery of some of it. And it's fascinating. And because I think a lot of it is because it's so unexplainable, It's
right.
I just always, since I was a little kid, was interested in it. And then we lived in a house here in Enid that we had a lot of weird stuff happening. And the whole family had kind of agreed over the years that this family house had stories and was haunted. So I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. I didn't really think that much about it. And we lived there for a while, and we had this series of things happen at our house. So I started just kind of looking up, and this is the early days of the interwebs. It was before, it was back when we had bulletin boards and, chat kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, there were websites, but it was like the maybe late 90s.
Okay.
So what that was like. So that was the height of the beginning of all the real people having access to the internet. So I found, I don't remember exactly what happened or how I decided to look this up, but I started just looking stuff up on the internet about the haunted, how to know if you have a haunted house or something like that. And I came across these paranormal investigation groups, and I was like, I didn't even know people did that. I was like, what are you talking about? Are you kidding me? And so I came across this one in Oklahoma City, and it was Ghost Haunts and Urban Legends of Oklahoma, it was Ghouli, Ghouli, which is Tanya's group.
Okay.
And so at the time, I didn't know her. That's how I met her. Okay. So I come across this group, and she's like, talk about how they investigate haunted houses and stuff like this. And so I email her, and I'm like, listen, I think I have a haunted house. And so she she was like, are you sure? And she's asking me all these questions, and she was kind of trying to weed me out to see if I was crazy or if it was really a legit deal. So finally, after a while, she thought, okay, well, she agreed to come check it out. So we set up a time, and they came up and they investigated our house. And that's when I met her, was because she investigated my house. And that was back in like 90, like late 90s, maybe like 99, something like that, 2000. And so, so she came and investigated my house, and then we just kind of hit it off. And then I really was just bugged her and was like, hey, I want to go with you sometime. So finally, she relented and let me come with her, and we just became, and now she's like one of my best friends.
That's great.
So we've been together like 20 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that was how I got into the ghost hunting stuff, because I didn't even know it was a thing. I was like, this is amazing. It's like grown up Scooby-Doo stuff, you know?
Right.
So, that was really fun. So I went with her a few times, and then after I was part of her group for quite a while, there wasn't anything in this area, so I started a group here called Erie, Oklahoma. And we had that for several years, and that was when Anthony would come with me and investigate.
Okay.
So had Erie, Oklahoma for a long time, and then that's really how I got into it.
Right. That's cool. Can you talk a little bit about what happened at that house, or are you...
Oh, sure. At my house.
Yeah.
So it's a big 2-story house on West Broadway in the historic area of town.
Okay. Yep.
And it had belonged to my stepdad's grandparents, and they had a business in downtown Enid. And so the couple lived there, and they had twin daughters, Jean and Jane. And Jean she never married, and so she lived with her parents in this house. And so Jane was my step grandmother.
Okay.
And so when we moved in there, we ended up moving into the house because they all had ended up passing away. Like, I didn't know them. The only one I knew was Jane. She was the last one of that family. And so we ended up moving into that house and rented it from the family and all that, and lived there for a long time. And our kids lived when they were first born. So there would be just things like you would hear. Sometimes we'd hear footsteps over the baby monitor, and you'd go running to see what it was, and there's nothing there. Or just kind of little things that didn't really seem scary, just seemed kind of weird.
Right.
And so one of the first things when things really started happening was when after our first daughter was born. And I had the baby monitor in her room, and then I had one on my nightstand, and she was right across the hall from me. And I never turned it off. It just stayed on all the time. Right. And I remember she was really little and, still pretty new. And I was so sleepy because you just don't get to sleep when you have new babies.
Yep.
So was really tired. And I remember I woke up one morning and I was like, oh my God, I slept all night long. She slept all night long. Oh my God. And so I got scared because I didn't wake. I thought, oh my God, did I not wake up? Did something happen? So I went running in there to check on her, and she was fine. She was asleep. And I thought, oh wow, she slept all the way through the night. And then I went in our room, was doing something, and I realized the monitor was turned off.
Oh.
And so I was like, well, so that was really weird.
Yeah.
And so kind of like, it was just me and my husband and the baby. So it was like, there wasn't anybody there to turn it off. So I thought maybe she just, and everybody that the family thought it was their Aunt Jean that haunted our house.
Huh.
And so everybody thought, well, maybe she just knew you were tired and you needed a break. I don't know. It was kind of weird.
Right.
So that was one thing that happened. And then later on, as she got older, I back up. She was about 18 months old, and my step-grandmother, Jane, she lived down the street at my mom and dad's house. She lived with my mom and dad when she got older. And so my daughter knew her as Nana Jane. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Jean and her parents had all passed away before we were involved in this family, so I didn't know them personally. I had never met them. And so obviously my daughter had not either. So one day, she was about 18 months old, and we were sitting in her bedroom, which had been Jean's room back in the day, and I was putting her shoes on her, and she looked up in the doorway, and she goes, "Hi, Nana Jane." And I looked up because I thought my mom and my grandma had walked in because they just lived right down the street from me, and I thought maybe they had come in the house. And I look up, and there is nobody there, and she was talking to Nana Jane, which was Jean's identical twin.
Wow.
So I was like, what? And so we were like, okay, that was pretty weird. And then as she got older, she would have these really bad dreams, and she wouldn't talk about them. She wouldn't say what they were. She would just, be upset and say she had a bad dream. Well, then when she got older, she would have this dream about this scary man at the bottom of the stairs. And then one time my husband and I were out of town, and my aunt was staying over with the kids, and she came to get in bed with my aunt, and she was like, well, what's wrong? And she goes, there's a scary man in my room. And of course my aunt gets freaked out, and she goes to look, and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And so that was starting to be concerning, because it was like, this is a little kid, and this is obviously scary. This is not sweet Aunt Jean or whatever.
Right.
So then that started kind of bothering me a little bit. And so it turned out that the family was going to sell the house, and so we moved out for a while. And so we moved out, and then the bad dreams stopped. And then it turned out they didn't have to sell the house, so we were going to buy the house, so we were going to move back after about like a year. So in the meantime, my uncle was over at the house, and he was remodeling and doing a bunch of stuff over there. And my mom asked him one day, she was like, hey, do you ever have anything weird happen while you're in the house, by yourself? And he goes, weird like what? And she's like, well, do you ever hear things? And he was like critters, or like what? Like what? What do you mean? Yeah. And she's like, well, and he goes, oh, I hear people talking upstairs all the time, but there's not anybody there. He goes, I've gone to look around a few times, and I haven't seen anybody, or, he said, but yeah, he goes, yeah, I hear stuff in there all the time.
Whoa.
So he had that happen. And so whenever it came time for us, when we realized that we were going to move back to that house, I was like, okay, look, this is when I had it investigated, because I was like, I don't want to move my children now back into this house when my daughter was having all these scary dreams happening at that house. So I was like, I kind of want to have it checked out. So that's when I came across the investigation group.
Okay.
So they came and investigated the house. And so a weird thing that happened while they were there is Tanya had her tape recorder, and she was just walking around with it the whole time, and you can hear our conversations and stuff. And in one part of when she played it back, when she got home and she played it back, she was like, hey, I need you to listen to this. This is really weird. And it was a recording. On the recording was the sound of a heartbeat. And then you hear this woman's voice say, hello. And it sounded exactly like my step-grandmother, who by this time had passed away. Wow. That's why we ended up moving back in the house. So that was really weird.
Whoa.
And she was like, well, sometimes she thought maybe she had held it too close to her chest and recorded her own heartbeat. So she tried to recreate it all these ways to recreate and she couldn't. So she finally sent it off to like somebody that she knew that was a doctor and said, hey, listen to this and tell me, tell me if you can hear anything weird about it or whatever. And they just said, well, it sounds like a heartbeat of somebody with congestive heart failure, which is what Jane died of.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And she didn't know that. She didn't know anything about her.
She didn't know that. Wow.
Know that. And so she comes back up, and my family gathers around, my dad and his brother and everybody gathers around, and she plays this recording for them to hear, and their eyes immediately tear up because they're like, that is our mom's voice.
Wow.
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 That was pretty crazy. So, in the meantime, while that house was empty and we weren't living there, I had to go over there to get something. And I had never been scared to be in that house before. I had lived there for a long time, and I love that. It's a really cool house. So we still had some stuff there, and I had to go get something. And I was upstairs in a bedroom, and the lights were on, and I just got that one of those really intense, you need to get out of here feelings.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I got to go, so I booked it out of the house, and I just had this overwhelming feeling of something's weird. So I left, and I thought, well, that's really weird because I had never had that kind of a feeling when I lived there before. So I felt like whatever it was not something that was normally there or had been there before. Like I felt like it was kind of a little scary.
Yeah.
And so so that was kind of around all that time when I decided to have the house investigated. But we ended up moving back in it. And then we didn't have as many things happen. My daughter still had some weird dreams. But the weirdest thing that happened to me when we lived there the second time was one night I was sound asleep in my bed, and my husband had been in the other room reading a book to our daughter. And he comes in the bedroom and he wakes me up, and I was like, what's the deal? And he goes, I just had the weirdest thing happen. And he is super skeptical. He doesn't believe in he doesn't claim to believe in any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But he goes, okay, I'm kind of freaking out. And I was like, what's going on? And he said, well, I fell asleep in her room while I was reading to her, and she fell asleep and I fell asleep. He goes, and I heard you I heard you call my name and wake me up. And he said, so I woke up because I heard you saying, hey, wake up. And I looked up and there isn't anybody there. And I come in here and you're sound asleep. You obviously did not call me to wake up. And I was like, no, I've been.
Oh, so so whatever it was mimicked your voice.
Yeah. And so then it gets weirder. So then another time I'm in my bedroom and I'm like folding laundry or putting laundry away or something. And my daughter, she's now like 6 or 7 by this time. She comes walking in and she goes, what? And I said, what? Like, what do you mean? She goes, well, you called me. What do you want? And I said, I didn't call you. And she goes, I heard you call my name. She said, I heard you call me. I said, I did not call you. I've been standing here folding clothes. I didn't call you.
Whoa.
So she thought it was my voice. And my husband thought it was my voice.
Wow.
So that was creepy to me because I thought, okay, that's too far. So then another thing. So one morning, my grandmother would always come over and watch my kids when I went to work. And so about 7:30 one morning, I was in the upstairs, the bathroom, getting ready for work. And I heard my grandmother call me from downstairs. She said, she called my name and I answered, but she didn't hear me. And I thought, she probably just didn't hear me. And she went on to do something else. So a little bit later, I come down the stairs and I see her and I'm like, hey, what did you want? She goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, you hollered at me a minute ago. And she goes, I just walked in. I don't know. She goes, and I was like, So Whoa. It mimicked my grandmother's voice also that I heard. And so then I was like, okay, that is too far.
Wow.
That seemed like scary to me. That seemed like tricky, And I was like, being tricky.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems like something that I think I've heard people say that like demonic or, dark forces will mimic. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a little bit. I didn't love that, and then we ended up moving, and we ended up not staying there. But interestingly, I know the people that live there now, and their daughter had the same bedroom that my daughter had, and they actually are friends now, and they danced together, and they got to talking one day, and their daughter had dreams about the scary man.
Oh wow. Jeez.
So that's the story of my house.
That is wild, man.
That is crazy.
It's a wild. Yeah, it was pretty weird.
All right, I need to take a pee break real quick. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No problem. Wow.
Be right back.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy, man.
It's a great house. It's a really cool house.
Say, Barry.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest job you've ever had?
That's a good question. It would either have to be the time that I worked at a cattle feedlot or the time that I worked for a Greek painter.
Were you his model?
Not quite.
Well, it's funny because one of my weirdest jobs was being a model in art school, but it was portraits, not full body nude. The reason I'm asking is because those jobs may be kind of normal, but we know people are out there that have weirder jobs than that. Maybe you're a mortician. Maybe you're a scientist trying to bring back the dinosaurs or the woolly mammoth.
That'd be cool.
That would be really cool. If you guys out there have weird jobs, unusual jobs, crime scene photographer, maybe you worked at an adult educational film set, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink. Just something that's unusual, out of the ordinary, and, a little bit weird. Hey, those are cool stories, too. We'd love to hear those. So give us a call or an email or whatever. You know how to get a hold of us. Be part of the community of Weirdsville.
So did you ever try to... I guess we can ask this when he comes back, but did you ever try to cleanse it, or did you do any of that kind of stuff, or did you?
Well, not really. Well, at the beginning, like when we just thought it was, Aunt Jean or whatever, we didn't really.
Yeah, I didn't want to.
That much. So we're like, yeah, she seems watchful and nice. We didn't really care about it that much, and it didn't seem intrusive or anything like that. So, and later, whenever I started thinking there was something like a man or whatever it was that was being scary, I was kind of like, I don't dig this part at all. But we ended up not living there much longer after that. And by then, I was already doing the investigation stuff. And But, I don't think we ever really did anything about it. I think we just kind of were like, well, that's weird about our business, but whenever that started I just felt like it was like screwing with my kids. And I was like, that's just too weird.
That's not what you want for sure.
No.
Yeah, that's wild. We have people on that tell stories like this, and sometimes they're like, we don't know what to do about it. We've had some people that have told some really scary, weird stuff that's happened to them, and like they don't know what to do. And it's like, man, I don't know what to tell you. I wish we knew someone that could give you advice, but we just don't have. We just collect stories. We don't, we don't go out and do anything. So it's. I'm always curious about that.
When people would ask us that, they were like, well, what do we do? We would always just tell them, because everybody's belief systems are different too.
Yeah, right.
So some people are like, well, pray it away. And I'm like, well, if you don't believe in that, well, that's not your bag, then it's not going to work for you. Like, it's got to work for your spirit, whatever you do,
for sure.
Yeah, you got to be okay with it. So, there were people that we would try to put people in touch with people that smudge their house or do blessings or come pray with them or whatever. We were like, you probably need to seek out your whatever spiritual advisor you have, if it's your priest or your pastor or whatever, because that's not really our deal. We're just here to kind of allay that you're not crazy, right. That you're just, because a lot of times people, that's the first thing they always say is like, I know it sounds crazy, but because they think that they get to that point and they think, am I crazy or something really happening? Yeah. So then you have somebody come in and you kind of go, okay, you may be crazy or maybe you're not,
that's the whole reason why we started doing this podcast, is because we wanted to, a format for people to be able to come on and tell weird stories, and that, a place where they could unload some of that stuff, because a lot of people don't want to talk about this in everyday conversation, because you put yourself out there, and now you're a lunatic,
Right. For sure.
Yeah, we hear this sounds crazy quite a bit when we're talking to people, so yeah.
Because they've been conditioned to think it's not acceptable, and society does look at you a little weird, and it's funny because when we wrote a book called Ghostlahoma about Oklahoma ghost stories, and we started collecting stories, and it's funny because everybody has a ghost story, even people that don't believe in ghosts, because they'll go, well, there was that one time.
That's right.
They'll be like, I don't believe in this stuff, but that one. So everybody has a story that they can't really explain away.
That's very true. Yeah. And that's what we say. Yeah. Everybody's got a weird story, whether it be you saw something that you don't, can't really put your finger on, or, you had an experience that you can't really explain to people. I think most people have that,
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and what you call it, maybe, you may in your head want to try to rationalize it, but there's some stuff that's just, it's hard to explain away.
Definitely.
Right.
That's for sure. That's wild, man.
Yeah.
So did you do a lot of stuff around here? Did you do a lot of investigations around here? Like, would people come to you and say, in town?
I mean, we've done a few. We did a few residences, and when people would find out, about it, and they would call you to come over and stuff. So we did a few around town. I mean, to me, it was always more interesting to try to get into like historical places or things like that. But so we've done a little bit of everything. But yeah, there was a house here in town that we investigated, and she would, tell us all these different things that were happening, and we would. I'd been over there a few different times, and we never could figure out what was causing anything. And one time we got this picture. I don't even know if I still have it somewhere. And I think we got this picture that was just like of a hallway, and all the lights were on because we didn't really do a lot of stuff in the dark. But all the lights were on, and just took this picture because we would just snap pictures around the house and see if stuff showed up or something weird happened or anything like that. And there's this big black mass in this picture, and we were like, what the heck is that? It was really weird, and we tried to recreate it with a camera strap and all. We tried to do all these different things to recreate it, and we just couldn't. It just looked like black mist. It was really weird. And so all this different stuff was going on at this lady's house, and we had, all these instances of things happening, but we couldn't really corroborate it with history or figure. We didn't know the history of the place really, and she didn't really know. And so one day we were telling a story, and somebody said, well, where is that house? And I told them the address, and they go, oh, that's where that so-and-so died. We're like, oh, and it was funny because there was 2 of us together. We were like, well, that explains a lot.
Right.
A lot. It happened to be like a neighbor or somebody that knew this old lady that used to live there or something, and she was unpleasant. And anyway, and they were like, oh yeah, she was mean, and we were like, well, there you go.
Right.
And so it was like 5 years later. We were like, well, here's your answer.
Oh wow.
So it was kind of fun, like when stuff like that happens, because then you're like, well, that explains a lot.
Sure.
So you've seen on the film the black orbs or the black mass or mist or whatever. You've seen orbs and stuff. Have you seen anything, personally with your own eyes?
So only really one time that I saw, I take that back, a couple times maybe. So one time we got to go investigate Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. Prison.
Oh, yeah.
Super scary. Scariest looking building ever.
Yeah.
It looks, well, first of all, it was built in the 1800s, and it was the first penitentiary built in the United States.
Yep.
It was built to be intimidating and scary because that was their whole point. It was built by these Quakers, and their whole deal was to scare people into submission.
Right.
And they would wear covers on their shoes so people couldn't hear when they were coming, and it was silent. They didn't talk. It was real. They did it to screw with people. Yeah. Because they would keep them in silence. And they would keep them in these small, tiny rooms, and they would lose it, Right. So it was not. It wasn't. It was kind of a scary place to be. So this building is real intimidating. It looks like a big medieval castle, kind of. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sketchy looking. Super scary.
Has it been on some shows? I think
for sure.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
It's been on lots of shows, and it's right in the middle of Philadelphia. So it's in the middle of a city, but it looks like a big medieval fortress. It's really spooky looking. Anyway, we got to go there we were on a show on the Learning Channel for this special they did. Okay. And so we got sent to the Eastern State to be part of this investigation team. And so we were there, and one of the things that we saw, which was really interesting because these other people saw the same thing that we didn't know about till the next morning. Basically, they sent 5 different teams in there to do individual investigations, and then they brought us all back in the morning to compare notes. And every team had a different thing that they did. Tanya did EVP. This other person had this dog, this really sensitive dog, and these other people had this computer system that was all motion detected, and all this it measured all these things at once. Mm-hmm. And then it was just a group of different people that did different things. And so Tanya and I went off together, and everybody else went with their own group. So we had gone up to the watchtower, and the prison is laid out like a wagon wheel. So you have the hub in the middle, and then it spokes out every way, the pods, their cells or whatever. And it's so they can see all the way around. So we're up in the watchtower, and we are walking. I think we were walking down the stairs, and we're coming back down, and I stopped and I looked back. I did a double take, and Tanya was like, what? And I was like, I swear to God, I saw somebody sitting on that bottom step. It just looked like somebody sitting there. But obviously there wasn't anything there. But I thought for a minute, I said it was just weird. I thought I saw somebody sitting there, and I know there's nobody here. So kind of went on about our thing and didn't think about it really much. Then the next morning when we all got together to compare stories, one of the other people said that they saw someone sitting on the steps in the watchtower, and I was like, oh, so did I.
Wow.
So that was kind of interesting. And then what none of us knew until after we all told our stories, the guy that was leading he was our guide, and he was the narrator of the show. And he's a big haunted historian guy. At the end of all of this, he tells us a story about how there had been an inmate had attacked a guard on those stairs and killed him. And none of us knew that, but we had a couple different groups had something happen on those.
Wow.
So we didn't know till the very end about that. And so we were like, well, okay.
Whoa.
So that was it.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
What kind of feeling do you get when you go into a place like that? Do you just feel it eerie the whole time you're there? Or
I was anxious. That one I was anxious about. Some of them I'm really excited just to go see, mostly because I love old buildings anyway. Scared or not. I just like the architecture, and I like the history and stuff. Mm-hmm. So some places I get really kind of excited to go to, and that one I was excited about, but I got kind of anxious, because it was scary looking anyway. Right. Because it was made to be that way. I mean, it's all psychological anyway, but so yeah, I was really anxious about going in there, and it's really big, it's dark, and of course the whole thing is, to be that way. So that one was a little bit, a little bit on edge, but then once you get in there and everybody's, following you around with the camera, it just kind of doesn't really seem that scary anymore.
Right.
In that instance. But that was a pretty weird place. But so that was one place where I thought I saw something. Then another time was here in Oklahoma. We got permission to go investigate out at one of the Indian reservations.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had some buildings out there, and they all had stories, and they would tell us. And we were one of the only groups that was ever allowed to come out there. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because they'd give us permission, and they'd let us go in, and we'd investigate the building, and then they would be sitting outside waiting for us to come out to tell stories, to tell them. And we would all share stories, and they would tell us stuff that they knew.
Right.
And so one day we were there, and it was daylight. We had gone like in the early evening, maybe, and it was summer. And so it was daylight for a long time still. And so we're in this building, and it's kind of just a long, not super big building, like a couple stories maybe. And it was kind of long. I think it had been maybe a school or something at some point. It was that kind of a building that had like lots of rooms, Mm-hmm. And I think it had been a school or a rehab center or something, but it was abandoned. It wasn't. They didn't use it anymore. And so that building was there, and it was empty. But then on the on the end, like outside the building, a few feet away from the building, was a sweat lodge that they still used all the time. They sweat lodge there. Yeah. And so it's kind of off over here to the side of the building. So the building has doors on each end, and so we had put all of our gear away, all of our cameras and stuff in our backpacks, and we were leaving because we were going to go do something else. So we're walking out of the building, and so of course nobody has a camera or anything when this happens. And so we're walking out of the building, and so we're on one end, and down at the other end of the building, it looked like somebody running from the end of the building over to the sweat lodge. And it was a shadow. I mean, it didn't look like a person. It looked like a shadow of an Indian warrior, like crouched down, like running. And I was like, and I thought it was like, I always think it's like my mind playing tricks on me, or, my imagination or something. And so I went, oh shit. I was like, oh my God, did anybody see that? And one of the other girls was standing there, and she goes, I did. And I was like, what did you see? I saw somebody like that wasn't really somebody run across there. And I was like, me too. So two of us saw it.
Wow.
So then I was like, okay, that was exciting. Somebody else saw it too. So that's really the only time that I've like seen something with my eyeballs, like in the daylight. That was pretty wild.
I could imagine something like an Indian reservation would probably be pretty cool place to go. Yeah, lots of stories and lots of intense stuff going on there. Wow.
Yeah, and we had also been allowed to go there to check out the Bigfoot stories at that spot.
Oh, so was this Concho?
Yeah.
Okay. Because
we've got
we've one of the girls that we grew up with went to high school. Also, all elementary, high school, everything. She came on and told us she saw the tape. Oh. There was a tape of a Bigfoot.
At Concho.
Yeah, caught on.
Eating out
camera,
of the
grease trap.
Yep.
I don't think I've seen that, but
that's because it's gone. It got gone. They got rid of it.
We had a really good friend that she had connections out there and stuff, and so she had gotten us to be able to come out there, and so we got to go out one night, and we were actually filming. We were going to put together like a documentary type thing. And so we had this guy with us with the camera and all that stuff. And we were kind of doing interviews with the people and everything. And we ended up, they let us come out to the fire. They built a fire out in the woods one night, and let us come sit around the fire with them, which was really kind of a really cool honor to get to do that, because that's not real. You don't usually get invited to stuff like that. So that was really cool. So we were walking through the woods, and, and we're talking with some of the kids and stuff, and we get to sit around the fire, and we're all telling stories, and they're telling us stories. Anyway, it gets to be really late, and we go to leave, and it's like 2 or 2:30 in the morning by this time. And so our cars are parked like back in this like parking lot, and there's like 2 cars. We're parked next to each other. It's our group and another. We were all together, but so we go back to our cars, and it's pitch black outside, except, moonlight. And off to the side of us is nothing but like wheat field, like forever. There's nothing there but field. And it's like I said, 2:30 in the morning. And from the middle of that field in the dead of night, we heard what sounded like a newborn baby crying.
Wow.
And we all looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, what was that? Because we all heard it. And, the stories about Bigfoot are that they mimic sounds that people make. Uh-huh. And so we were like, is it a kid? It could have been anything. It could have been somebody out there jacking with us or whatever, but that was pretty weird in our night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we've heard our friend Becky's story about Concho, and then we talked to another guy when we went down to the Bigfoot Fest in southeastern Oklahoma a couple years ago, and he had some amazing stories that took place there. And
he was trying to track him. He was on his trail. It was bizarre. It was crazy.
I'm fascinated with the Bigfoot story too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of our fellow hometown Kingfisherians or whatever, we're K-Town crew. He saw a family of Bigfoot just inside or just at the edge of Kingfisher in the Kingfisher Creek area down in the flood part. But like that's another episode that he told us that story, and it was just amazing that there's so many there. To me, it's amazing that there's so many Bigfoot stories in the Flatlands area where we were.
There are a lot, and there's a lot. Like it's always interesting to me too, because it's a lot of times those people that don't believe in that stuff that say and they'll be like hunting or camping or Boy Scout with a Boy Scout camp or something, and everybody has not everybody, but a lot of those people, outdoorsmen type people, have stories about seeing something like that. A lot of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me. And, then you have my husband doesn't believe it at all. He just there's no way there could be a being that nobody has ever been able to detect. I'm like, oh no, maybe they're really smart. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. But I'm kind of on the fence about whether it is or it isn't in the science of it. But there's a lot of stories for it to not be.
It's fun to think about, when we went to the festival too, everybody's got a story, and we got to hear a couple of lectures, they got guys that come in and they talk about the stuff, and, it's up to interpretation, but it's cool to think about. I think it's, and there was a creature that was at one point in time that roamed. That was, Gigantopithecus. Is that the name?
That was one of them, of the large apes that we discovered. So.
Yeah, so we had, we used to do, it's not annual, we kind of do it whenever we feel like it, but we used to have a paranormal conference. We called it Paracon for a long time, and then everybody started using that name. Now we just call it Ghost Oklahoma. But we've had...
which I think is a superior name, personally. Yeah. I love that. that.
Thank you. So we've had some of the Bigfoot guys come up, and they've played recordings of the knocking noises they make and stuff, and that's pretty weird to me.
It is.
Yeah, well, next time you do have one of those set up after all the COVID-19, we can return to normalcy. Let us know. We'll try to at least get Barry out there, or maybe Jeff out there, and hopefully I can come down and.
Have you guys ever been to the Haunted America conference in Illinois, in Decatur?
No,
Illinois.
Yeah.
So Troy Taylor puts on the Haunted America conference in Decatur, Illinois every year. I think it's in Decatur, and he is the one that narrated the show that we did for the Learning Channel.
Okay.
But he's written over 100 books about history, haunted history and true crime and stuff, and he has what's it called? I think it's called Haunted America podcast, but you guys probably really like it. But he's fascinating. Cool. And he gets on TV a lot. He gets to narrate like lots of those haunted history shows and stuff.
Cool.
And he's fascinating to talk to.
Well, if you have a contact or anything with him, then if we could get that or pass it along to Barry, and then we'll talk to him, see if he'd be interested in being on our show as well.
Yeah, he's pretty fun to talk to. I don't know how much speaking stuff he does. He used to do a lot, and then he kind of quit, and he does every now and then. But yeah, he's fascinating. He's got lots of good stuff.
That's great.
That's
cool.
We're always looking to talk to people. Because we just love we love talking to people, and we love hearing good stories. So.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah. We
used to have after Tanya and I did the investigation stuff for a long time, we started a blog back when MySpace was a thing, and so we had a blog, and it was called Ghost Divas, and because we didn't name ourselves that, we got named that by the camera guy when we were doing the show. because it was funny because there was all these different teams doing things, and we were super concerned about not looking stupid on TV.
Right.
Not necessarily being pretty, but we didn't want to look stupid. We're like, we don't want to run, we don't want to scream, we don't.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like rainy, and we were like, and this guy had to follow us around all day on this one of the things we were doing. It was outside, and we were kind of just grousing around about it. And so he started calling us the Ghost Divas kind of as a joke. And so we just, as a joke, took on that name. We just kind of called our blog that. So it got to where we had this really huge following of our blog. And then we did a podcast for like 3 years, and we would interview all different kinds of people. And that was a lot of fun. We did it for a long time. And then I decided to step away from all that because I got involved in city politics. So right. I was like, yeah, I got to quit doing this if I'm going to do that. So, but we had our blog was a lot of fun, and we met a lot of interesting people that way. We had Zach Baggins was on our show. And
oh, cool.
That was fun. And yeah, we had some really interesting people. We interviewed Courtney Gaines from Children of the Corn.
Oh, wow.
We interviewed him. We interviewed Dennis Hoff that owned the Bunny Ranch in Nevada.
Right.
Andy Kaufman haunts the Bunny Ranch. So we got to talk to all the girls from the show. And
that's cool. That's awesome.
It was fun.
That's great. So do you do any investigations anymore, or are you kind of done with that?
I haven't in a long time because, like I said, I kind of got away from it when I was doing all the city stuff, and I got just involved in other stuff and just have time. And so I haven't in a long time. Every now and then, if we get the opportunity to go somewhere cool, we try to go check it out. But what I started doing was I started doing the ghost tours in town. So I do every year I do the Erie Enid ghost tours, and so I kind of stick to that. And then we did our book. We do our conference and stuff like that. So I don't get to do a lot of it anymore. But
yeah, we'll come do that. We'll come do that with you for sure. Yeah. My wife is like way into that stuff, so and I remember her talking about you a long time ago. She
came on one of my tours a long time ago.
Yeah. So
I could have had the place out at the mall.
Right. Yep. So yeah, what a trip, man. That's great. What do you got? You got any other stuff for us?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I always have lots of stories, but I was trying to think if there's something in particular.
We need to get Tanya. You think we can get Tanya?
Yeah, she said she wants to do it sometime. She just couldn't do it today because I didn't give enough notice. But she has she wants to do an EVP thing, so she would be really good to get on stuff.
That'd be great.
Really once.
Yeah.
So yeah, she would be glad to do it sometime, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, you're also welcome to come back anytime you want to,
Yeah.
Skype with two hot dudes and tell stories about ghosts.
Yeah, we've been kicking around trying to do, because we did our podcast for, like I said, like 3 years, and we had listeners all over the place, and we had a lot of fun doing it. But it got really hard it gets hard trying to find people all the time.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
So it's hard to try to track everybody down and all that stuff. But
for sure.
There were 5 of us that did it together, and so it got a little bit chaotic and crazy. But we were kind of also known as like the mean girls, because our deal was calling people out, like if they were lying about stuff or they were faking stuff, so we kind of got the reputation for being mean.
Yeah.
Which we made a lot of people mad. Like I say, it was at the height of all these ghost shows.
Yeah.
So Ghost Adventures was on, and Ghost Hunters, the Taps guys, got mad at us one time, and there was everybody always threatened to sue us all the time. And we made Chip Coffey mad, the guy that did the psychic kids.
I went and saw, my wife and I went to go see Chip Coffey. We paid to go see him at this thing in the city, and it was good. I mean, it was fine, you know, but I could tell that, I don't know. I'm not going to get into it, but I just could feel like it was.
He and Tanya got into a snark fest for a while, and so we made, I would say, we made a few enemies doing all that. The whole deal was we just wanted people to be accountable for the things that they said out loud.
Well,
like, don't say stuff like that. Don't scare families if you don't need to scare. I mean, come on. Some of it's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And that was our whole deal. It's like, don't be irresponsible and be accountable for the things you say and be accountable for the things that you put out there. Yeah. And so, no, people don't always like that.
Yeah. Especially if
we had a lot of fun.
But especially if it's something that you're doing. It's a field that you're involved in and you're trying to do the right thing, and you see other people that are maybe not necessarily trying to do that. It's kind of your responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You want, and there's like nobody's ever going to take you seriously in this field anyway, because it's like I call it earlier, it's kind of a nerddom. It's its own little thing, and nobody's going to take you seriously if you're out there being an idiot,
right?
And you're saying stupid things, and you're constantly being, caught in lies, and like, it's just why there's enough stuff that really happens that there's no need to make stuff up, or the whole deal.
100%.
Well, and also when they make up stuff, they lose credibility, not for only for themselves, but for everyone.
Yeah. And so it's like, look, if you want people to take you seriously, then be truthful.
Right. Yeah. But that's also the problem when you got a TV show. You need ratings, so you got to, you got to come up with something.
Yeah, true.
But yeah. So yeah, let's do that. Let's set it up with Tanya. And if you want to come on with her, you guys can team up or whatever you want to do. But open door policy, you're welcome back anytime.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for coming on and taking the time to talk to these two sexy dudes.
You're welcome.
That's what we're going to be known as. Hey man, did I ever tell you about this recent thing that happened to me? I was driving around in the country and it was just after dusk. So there's a little bit of light still coming on out of the sky, but it was mostly dark. I saw this black school bus.
I don't think I've ever heard this.
Okay, so I saw this black school bus. All the windows were tinted and it started following me for about 15 minutes.
Whoa, no.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I was at work. I was making deliveries and I just kept making my deliveries, and like it would even stop and wait for me. And but it was never close enough to where I could see it or anything, but it was following me, man.
Wow. Dang.
That's just an example of another really weird story that happened to me and that could have happened to you. You don't have to have a UFO encounter. You don't have to have seen the ghost of your grandmother. You don't have to know what Bigfoot smells like to have had a weird story. Basically, what we're saying is weird covers a lot of ground here on the What's Your Weird Story podcast. And we love hearing all of your stories, whether they're spooky, they're funny, they're bizarre, or they're just short, sweet, and unexplained. Kind of like our podcast. Tammy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing those really amazing stories. That's just so much good stuff there.
Yeah, that building that she went into there down in Texas, we looked it up and we were looking at pictures of it and stuff, and I'd like to go there someday and take a look at it because it's really cool, man. It's got that really cool old weird vibe to it. But yeah,
I'll be posting some pictures for sure of that. And dude, I mean, I would just like to go look at it for the architecture of it and the structure of it. And I like looking at places that have kind of been closed and locked off from humanity. Yeah. And they're kind of decaying a little bit. There's something really, I don't know, fascinating, maybe romantic. I don't know if that's quite the word for it. Yeah. But there's something about it that really I find intriguing and inspiring and just visually interesting.
It's like time stops.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't get away from the fact that things just as a building or a structure sits there over time, it just sort of dilapidates a little bit, and it just adds to the creep factor. It's it's just one of those things. My wife is really drawn toward old buildings also. She's always wanting to, buy these old homes that are just totally decrepit, and oh my God, that'd be so cool. All I see is just all the work that would go into it. But
that you would have to do.
but it is cool. I mean, I do get it. I do understand why the draw is there, but and also, the stuff that she went through here in her home that she lived in here in Enid, the hauntings there were just wild stuff. Again, maybe the fact that it's your family member, it makes it a little bit better, but it'd be weird.
I don't know. It depends. I mean, would it be better? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
That's true. Because I don't know that I want my folks around every waking moment.
Yeah, definitely. I do not want to be haunted by my mother at all. But my mom is alive and well, so there's that. So everything's good. Everything's good. But fortunately, I'm ghost blind, so
just ignore the knocks and the whispers.
I do already. So.
Yeah. But no, it was cool to have her on, and the fact that she had her own podcast for a little while, and she was doing this, and it's cool to have somebody that has a little bit of knowledge on how to investigate and how they would investigate these things. We get a lot of people with stories, but we don't get a whole lot of people that investigate. We've had a few, but it's cool to get people on that have a little bit of knowledge on how you do this stuff, and if you're interested in doing that kind of stuff, maybe that helps maybe give you a little bit of direction and stuff like that. So
awesome. Well, thanks again, Tammy. Those were fantastic stories, and we are very, very honored to have you on and have you share those with us.
Absolutely.
All right, Bear. Well, let's before we wrap it up for the week, let me let you know what we got coming up for everybody next week.
Cool.
We have a special return. We got some friends coming back. You know how we like to have our friends come back and share stories. That's one of our favorite things to do. We always welcome anybody to come back and share more if they come on and share. We've got that open door policy, and of course, just anybody who wants to come on and share, we welcome you as well. But next week we have the return of some of our fan favorites, Chad and Alta.
Oh yeah. And
they came on, and we've had them on, which seems like forever ago now, but it was just around Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah.
Of course, March was a year long itself, but we got Chad and Alta back, and they are picking up from their Orbduction story, and they're catching us up with what has happened basically in the 20 some odd years since that event. And man, it's a lot, and also some other older stories that were kind of recovered memories as well. So it's a long one, but it's got a lot of information and a lot of different kinds of stories. But man, they're always fun, and Chad and Alta are just fun guests,
absolutely,
to talk to and have on the show. So check us out next week for that. And in the meantime, hey, contact us on our social media. Tell us what you've been watching, what you've been listening to, what's been getting you through recently. We're always looking for suggestions for stuff to check out, whether it's like TV shows or movies or music bands. We're always into that. So speaking of which, we're inching closer to getting our second and better version episode of Spin Jamorama coming out.
That's right.
Very, very. I know he's going to be humble about this, but I'm going to praise him on it already. But Barry made a theme song and intro for it, and it is so awesome. So we got that coming up very soon. So keep your ears out for that as well, and so much other good stuff coming up in the next few weeks, man.
Yeah, we got some great stuff, man.
Yeah, it's hard to even describe, but keep it here. Subscribe to us if you don't, so you can automatically have everything downloaded every week when you sign into your podcast listening platform. rate and review us on wherever you do. If you're on iTunes, we really would appreciate some reviews there, like written reviews, to other people. That helps us get noticed by people who don't know about us. And, we want to grow. We want to keep growing the podcast and our community of Weirdsville, so that helps us get noticed, and that helps bring new listeners, and also will bring new stories for you guys to check out as well. So, spread the word, tell people about it. Join us on our Facebook page if you haven't, or follow us on Instagram. That's where we're most active, because that's what I do, and I like doing the Instagram stuff. But yeah, man, just help us out. Support the community, which you guys do anyway. We already know that. But anyway, we're gonna let you go, and have a good week. And we'll see you next week. Same weird time, same weird podcast platform. I think I tried that before, but still it doesn't work. All right, everybody, be safe,
be weird.
As always, if you have a weird story, we want to hear it.
If you have a lot of them, we want to hear them all.
We can't do this podcast without your invaluable contributions.
Whether it's sharing your stories,
listening,
rating,
and spreading the word about the podcast. Thanks for listening. Till next time, be safe.
Be weird.
The stories presented on the What's Your Weird Story podcast are, to our knowledge, true experience.